So, what we're experiencing right now is a problem with Amazon AWS. And Amazon AWS, for those who did have my digital citizenship, is a web platform service. So, Amazon and AWS, those are the top two in this right now. This is Down Detector, downdetector.com. There's a couple things like this. This one's fun because it gives you the little line graphs. These are all self-reported. So anytime something's not working correctly and you think the service is the problem, not you, you can go in here and click it. And usually you'll see like a billion other people already clicked it too. Does help for moments like this of triaging what's actually going on. So there's Instructure, Canvas. That's right. There's that one. And you might notice Instructure, Venmo, Amazon, Alexa, Reddit, a lot of these have pretty much the exact same shape of problems. This is the problem over time graph. Delta, oh, that's not good at all. This one's a different shape. Some of these are different shapes. But the ones that are the most down right now all have the same spike of around about around 3 a.m., 4 a.m. our time, which I was actually up because my dog needed to go out. And I was like, huh, looks like and I was just like, nothing's loading. That's weird. And I opened up Down Detector and it was like, I saw Amazon was up. I'm like, oh no, here we go. So what does this mean? What does this have to do with Canvas? Um, Web services are very complicated machines. You have stuff like your Canvas, your EC Learns, all of these services, they need servers to process all the stuff going on, to generate the pages to send to you, to generate the information, to store all the data. When you upload stuff to ECLearn, it's going somewhere. It has to go to a computer hard drive somewhere on Earth. And a lot of these companies choose to build their services on top of tools made by Amazon, specifically AWS, Amazon Web Services. Amazon changed the game with it, with AWS. Sort of the history of that way back when Amazon was the first like super scalar online store that like could do global size stuff and like it worked. Everybody else, like if you ever tried to buy concert tickets and like the site just like absolutely does not work, they're trying to solve a problem that Amazon figured out, which is how do you deal with a something that should be a single point of truth across, a billion people across the world. Also, the problem with concert tickets is the thing you're selling, there's a very limited number of them, and you're not supposed to sell the same thing twice for obvious reasons. But anyway, Amazon built this giant, giant system, and I was trying to find like overview articles this morning. Interesting that I type in AWS and the first hit is Microsoft Azure, which is the competitor. So Amazon built this amazing, amazing web store, like nothing that was seen before. And they just really engineered the hell out of the architecture. They have countless servers running in dozens of data centers. They can move data around the world quickly and easily. And they built databases upon databases and places to put images and sounds and all sorts of stuff. And at some point, they decided to start selling that as a product itself. The actual tools that they built in order to build the Amazon store, they're like, well, what if we open that up as a platform? So when you, as a maybe a startup or an existing company, say we need to build something for the web, something for the internet, we can use the Amazon tools instead of reinventing everything from scratch and having to buy a shit ton of servers to handle the load of a global scale project like Canvas. You would just have Amazon, and with Amazon, if you have one customer that month, fine. But if you suddenly go viral and you have 10 million, Amazon will be like, yeah, sure, I have effectively infinite server power. So I will happily just scale you up if that's what you want. If you get more and more and more hits, I will just use more and more of this infinite cloud compute power for your thing, and I'll just bill you for it. But if you're getting a million hits, you can afford it. And everybody started building more and more on top of Amazon. Of course, the images aren't even loading on AWS's own site right now, because although those images are probably in AWS. So the kind of stuff, I know what I want to draw for this, but I'm hoping I can find stuff. You're going to see a lot of diagrams like these if you look for it. How stuff actually works. I don't know whose service this is, but you see all these boxes and all these arrows. These are the components that make up a modern web system because you have to have something to handle login. Like somewhere you need the database of who is a user and what permissions do they have and what account is it and what are they allowed to see. If it's a social network, you have an enormous database of who's friends with who's. That is a graph. That is a graph data structure that you might remember from math. Just like, everybody's a circle and you have lines connecting you to other people. That's numbers that have to be stored somewhere, and it's stored in one of these boxes that you can then pay to have stored in Amazon's effectively infinite spot of, where Amazon has specific tools for graphs. So if you're saying we're going to do a social network, Amazon has a graph storage tool. You don't have to do any extra work. They already know how to store and manage and compute graphs effectively. So of course we're just going to use the graph tool. Of course we're just going to use the database. Of course we're just going to use the user login tools. But what that does is it creates a single point of failure. Now, Amazon typically almost never goes down. AWS is under so much stuff as we're discovering today, stuff you didn't even realize was doing it because the startups, the companies that use this, there's no reason to advertise that. They don't need you to know that. Uh, Lots of stuff uses Amazon AWS. There are only three games in town when you're talking about stuff this big and stuff this powerful. Amazon AWS, Google Cloud Services, and the new kid on the block is Microsoft Azure. Those are the three guys. Amazon's is the oldest, it is the most mature. Also, from a developer point of view, the people writing the code that's going to sit on top of these services and will access these services like libraries, Amazon is really stable. You can build on something and it will continue working like effectively forever. Google has a reputation of jerking the developers around, where you'll build using the Google version of the tool, and then a year later, Google's like, "Oh, we're changing it, and it's going to stop working next week, and that's your problem. Go fix all your stuff." It's like my stuff wasn't broken; you broke it. They're just they tend to like jerk their customers around a little bit, um, and Azure is still new and fresh and doesn't have as much of this robust tooling. So you'll see a lot of this kind of shit here. So actually, this is a good one. So corporate data center. So you can have parts of your stuff in your actual building, and then all this stuff is happening in the cloud through various Amazon services that you've woven together. And some people in this room aspire to be software engineers someday. And that is a lot of what the job is finding a tool that already exists that does it. In this class, our example is the library, like the P5JS library that lets us draw things without having to compute the pixel math of what an ellipse is, and what a rectangle is. Like it does a lot of the shitty hard work for us. This is that same idea scaled up to a really high degree where you have stuff that is AWS Direct Connect. You have the transit gateway, you have Amazon routing, Amazon Shield. AWS Shield is doing like virus protection and stuff. So they're just piping all of these services together. And for a lot of software engineers, that's the whole career, is just piping this stuff together to create the particular machine that you are trying to build for your company or organization. And Amazon is a huge, huge part of the web as a result of this. And I'll say it again, Amazon goes down very rarely. They have so much redundancy in that cloud. They have so much data protection. So it's very rare for there to be a cataclysmic kind of thing like this. And we're experiencing what? Yay! A millennial lecturing Gen Z on, hey, this is a rare thing that should never happen. But here it is happening again in just the time I've known you. Yay! I know, I haven't told you a scary story in a long time. I do worry that sort of the enshittification of all, where these companies are always searching for higher profits for their shareholders, might start cutting corners, and that like always up promise might start getting failed more often. AWS and Amazon will be paying all these companies out. They do have an uptime guarantee, and if they don't hit it, they pay real money back to these customers. That's kind of their motive to never go down. Yet here we are. I don't know what's up in the next couple days if you stick to the like the tech reporting places like your tech crunches and your wireds and whatnot. You're probably going to see some postmortems when they figure out what the problem was and Amazon finally makes a statement, and then they're going to go interview people in the parking lot behind Amazon. What really happened? Like we'll get the story on what exactly broke in there this morning. So what we do know, so this is just reading right off the top of Down Detector. User reports indicate issues at the Amazon Web Services in the US East 1 region. That's part of how these things work is they define service regions that more or less refer to a single data center. So Amazon has two for the East Coast. I don't know exactly where they are. They don't like people knowing exactly where they are, especially now with AI and all the people who hate it going to try to go to data centers to like protest at them. They don't like people knowing where their data centers are. And for the protection of every service that uses them, I'm okay with that. But there are two. There are two big data centers that serve the United States East Coast, and apparently one of them, the US East 1 region, is malfunctioning. So, if you are a company, if you're Reddit or Venmo or Canvas or Battlefield or Ring Cameras, any of these companies that built your services using Amazon, it's been a real weird day since 4 a.m. Maybe you thought ahead and you were like, you know what? Anything we're doing in Amazon, we should have replicated in the other cloud services with Google and Microsoft too. That way there isn't one point of failure. Good for you. Very smart. Good planning. I have a friend who used to work at Vistaprint, and that was his big project, the last big project that took him like 2 years to do when he was there, when he was senior engineer, was everything they do is now cloud agnostic. So when this starts going down, they can just hit a proverbial button and start spinning up all the same functionality up in Azure or up in Google Cloud, and they'd be back up and running in like a half hour. If their cloud of choice went down, that also means they could always switch to whatever cloud happens to be cheaper. But all of those block diagrams we saw, all of these different block diagrams and all these different services that you weave together, every cloud services is different. So it's not easy to move from one to the other. That's why it took them, his team, like 2 years to figure out how to agnosticize it, because you basically had to rebuild the same infrastructure 3 times. And then the actual product that was Vistaprint ran on top of that infrastructure. Really heavy duty abstractions that they had to figure out. This also encourages, and this is from Digital Citizenship, this encourages you to, as a startup, as a company, to get kind of ecosystem locked in to one or the other. That it makes more sense to build everything in Amazon if you have one thing in Amazon because they all work together better. And to then go over to Google Cloud or to Microsoft's cloud, they work totally differently. You'd have to learn a whole new set of tools, and there's a bitch load of stuff to learn in here because every little thing has its completely different API and instructions and documentation, and we are but humans. Having someone who specializes in all three kind of doesn't exist because it's so complicated. So it's really hard, but it encourages you to get locked in. And who loves vendor lock-in? The vendor. So of course they want you to get locked in. I'm not saying they are intentionally making things obtuse for the purpose of locking you in, but they have no reason to try to make it easier on you to switch cloud services. They have no reason to do that. Anybody here remotely in business? I know you are. I know a couple of you are, but yeah. Why would like making it easy for you to switch to a competitor? Unless you're like, there's two forces that would do that. One is regulation, and we know that's fucking not on the table. And the other is if your customer demand for that is so high that that gives you value, right? Like one of Apple's things right now is they are more secure for the user, not because they care about you, but because that gives them value over the other phone suppliers. Nobody is saying, I want to switch from cloud to cloud because you guys didn't know this existed 20 minutes ago or a year ago. As actual customers, you have no idea this is happening behind all of your favorite apps, but it is. So anything on this chart that you see, and I do recommend you pull this up and look through and look for your favorite stuff and see, and just kind of keep in mind that this exists. So your AWS, whoop, this shape indicating that AWS has a problem. Anything that has approximately that shape means they're using AWS. So their failure tracked as AWS failed. Sometimes a system will be built in-house. Like they won't rely on these cloud services. They will do it themselves. Maybe they don't move a ton of data, but often with those, they'll be like, right, but it would be really convenient to just use Amazon for this one piece. And it's very tempting. And so some places will say, okay, I'll just use the Amazon login service because getting login software is a real bastard of a problem to solve, and it's just tight, finicky engineering. And if you're wrong, everybody's private shit is exposed. So I'm going to use the one that I know works, right? But everything else is in-house. Everything else is in the servers in the basement. Everything else is here. You still go down when Amazon goes down because nobody can log in. So any piece in here can result in part or all of your service going down. Um, for the EC Learn situation, they're just straight up saying, I'm going to turn everything off. They probably have every Word doc and PDF you've ever read and uploaded is probably sitting in Amazon buckets. Every photo, every piece of text, every takeaway, those are all blobs in the Amazon blob store. And that's the actual technical name for it. Blob meaning unstructured data. It can be whatever you upload. And if you don't have that, you don't have a management system. You don't have anything. If the database is in Amazon, you don't even know what classes exist. It's all just failing. So what's going on at the Instructure offices right now? I don't know, but I'm sure it's not fun. Sure, a lot of people got a lot of panic calls as today went on in a lot of offices all across Boston and DC and San Francisco. Oh, San Francisco. If you make pizza in San Francisco, tonight's got to be a really good night for you because everyone's got to have everybody on board for the next 24, 48 hours, all hands on deck, working to try to work around this failure. And if you are an Amazon exec, oh, you got on that Learjet and got back to the office as fast as you fucking could once this cracked. Because Amazon is that big store, and you know very well how Amazon has impacted like shopping. That is a drop in the bucket for how much influence they really have over the world. Their real influence is AWS because it's underneath everything else. And they're the ones who made Google make a cloud service and made Microsoft make a cloud service, who are trying to catch up to AWS, which is how we end up here. For cloud services, yeah. Prop at one point combined. I don't know if that's still true. Exactly. Exactly. The Google Cloud Services, I bet their website's going to work. Google, right. We as normal customers, we didn't need to know. And if you weren't studying like at least a fraction of computer science, you would not know. I mean, Instructure was nice enough to say, look, it's because of Amazon, and then you can click in here and you can kind of start to put together what this is, like because they gave you sort of a clue. But a normal person, like anybody who has not been in a course like this, no idea what that's talking about. You shouldn't ever need to know. But that's why we are here getting educated so that you can know more and understand the world better and make better decisions as adults out there, blah, 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 blah. That's why we're here. Yeah, so I bet the Azure cloud, again, Microsoft must be paying for this. Because again, that cloud came up above the cloud I was looking for. Google Cloud Platform? Oh, wow, your website came right up. Weird. Because this comes down to actual physical servers. So, like, Google has their own cloud services because they have their own data centers all over the world, and Microsoft has their own data centers. OpenAI, ChatGPT, is entirely in Microsoft Azure. So all of those servers that you will always are chugging all that water and burning all that electricity, technically Microsoft owns them, and OpenAI is leasing them. And they are building new data centers just for OpenAI, but it is actually Microsoft who is providing that as a service. So we call this like platform as a service, PaaS. Anytime in tech stuff, if you're in an interview or whatever, and you see a phrase ending in AS or AAS as a service, this is the kind of stuff they're talking about. You want GPU power so you can train AIs? You can go to Amazon, you can go to Google, you can go to Microsoft and say, I want to buy GPU time. Here's my training set. Let me shove it into your API, and you're going to send it to your, million servers with all your GPUs in them, and then I'm going to get the result back. And I will pay you for that. You don't have to buy a single piece of hardware. We have so many startups that don't own a single computer. Netflix, pretty big deal in the streaming world. Netflix started up as a little startup way back when they sent you DVDs in the mail. And they still called it Netflix, but it was net as in like you ordered them on the internet, and that was the new cool thing. And now it's, became the definition of online streaming. They were really proud. This was maybe 10 years ago at this point that they closed down their last server that Netflix owned. Netflix was 100% moved into AWS at the time. So every single movie, every TV show, and we're talking what, millions of gigabytes of material for the entire Netflix catalog, for the entire Hulu catalog. Hulu's clearly in AWS. That didn't work this morning. My fucking podcast app didn't work this morning. I was so pissed. Had to listen to the radio in the rain. I was like, "Oh, I guess fine." So much data, and they're just sitting on racks of hard drives in some, bunker size warehouse that just has everybody's data in it. Now, is that a security vulnerability? Not really. Amazon doesn't care what these companies that are their real customer are putting in their storage. Only that company can access it. They have historically done a very good job with security, because the moment they fuck that up and one customer can see another customer's data, it's kind of all over. Like that would be unacceptable. And that would be the power of the market saying, well, we're all going everywhere else now. So Google's like, hey, you want to try 300? And I am logged in with a Gmail, so that's not weird. It does know who I am. I did consent to that. They're like, what do you want to do? You want to create a VM, a virtual machine, just have a computer in the cloud? That's more or less what Codio is little pretend computers running in the cloud somewhere every time you do an assignment. Train and host ML models. We have a tool called Vertex AI. You want to create a database? Don't have a database on your servers in your office. No, put it in the cloud. We can duplicate it. We can back it up. You don't worry about a thing. Don't worry. BigQuery is actually part of the secret sauce of what made Google the winning search engine. Google's secret sauce. So Amazon's secret sauce was their architecture, that global architecture that they are now selling as mini services to everybody. Google's secret sauce of winning the search wars was their ability to search their database very quickly when their database is, trillions of items large. So their BigQuery tool that's best in class there. And they even have, but the version you can get through Google Cloud Services is not the good one they use for Google itself. They actually keep the really good shit just for themselves. They have a secret next layer that they won't let us use. They don't even let us use it, never mind see it. That is the most closely guarded secret at Google, is how their big table works. That big database that actually has all the search results and all the search data and how they process that so quickly. That's their best kept secret. And then you have Azure. Build an account with Azure account. Look, all these sites have been so friendly. Pay as you go, Azure free account. Azure's the new kid on the block. Microsoft is clearly older than Amazon or Google by a lot, but they were the last of the three to get into cloud services. It kind of got to the point of like, hey, how do you not have this? And they're like, oh, I don't know. And they started doing it. So their stuff tends to be a little more basic. But they're also in the market of giving more stuff away for free right now because they're the little guy trying to like chip away at it. Very weird to refer to Microsoft as the little guy in any room, but they're like, oh yeah, you can use for 5 months for free. You get unlimited this, blah 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 blah. Are you already an Office 365 customer? You want a server? You can just use the server. I'm not using it. You can use it. They're giving stuff away for free and low cost, and it's pretty neat. But they are less sophisticated products. They are more around like, hey, do you just want a computer to run whatever you want on it in the cloud somewhere? Host your website, put your database on it. They don't have all those very specific tools that Amazon's developed because Amazon was in on this game 20 years earlier. So that's kind of a quick overview of the cloud services world. And what we did was we created 3 points of failure that undermine most sites. most services. We have any questions, any thoughts? We want to discuss this a little bit. So everybody can do all this. Oh, Microsoft has a fun one. They have one product that's just AI to read documents. So take pictures of documents and turn them into text, OCR. If that's part of your product, don't invent that. Don't try to write that algorithm. You're just like, all right, I'm just going to send the picture to the Microsoft system and it's going to read it and send me back the text. Done. Let's go to lunch. Right? It's pretty appealing as long as they don't go down. Let's give this a refresh, see where we're at. It's not getting better. I guess this. I have a problem. Yeah, this is that's not great. Keep in mind, down detector is not using science. This is just people hitting this button. And you hit the button and you can say, what are you having trouble with? Here are some of the pieces of AWS that they have. And I'm not having problems with any of these particularly, but I am having trouble with Instructure. Can't get to the website. And I just added one person of the millions that are clicking that for that little graph there. So go ahead, participate, use it. What might be cool is to see sites that started spiking and then stopped. So Roblox must have had a backup feature. They must have had a switch over to another cloud provider button, like a contingency plan, like I was talking about. And then they did it, and now they're more or less okay. So they must have thought ahead and had a backup plan. Ancestry did the opposite thing. They were kind of fine, but my guess is Ancestry's been fucked since 4 a.m. and they don't have the spike because nobody was using ancestry.com at 4 a.m. Just nobody noticed because this is user reports. So if you want to feel like a detective, you can kind of click through here and see stuff. Oh, McDonald's, you fell for it too. EA, that's unsurprising. Life 360 going down can be bad. Oh, that turns into safety stuff for people who are relying on that. We'll see if this recording works. Zoom says it's recording. Zoom did, because Zoom like held up the whole fucking pandemic, they did invest in being able to work through any cloud service anywhere. Like they did lots of infrastructure investment. So where you're seeing lots of problems, if this is probably a small percentage of Zoom's traffic is impacted and they are just actively routing to their services in the other cloud platforms because they ran the world for like 15 months. So they had to get their shit together. T-Mobile, come on, man. The fact that Microsoft is having some issues is suspicious. Microsoft, are you running Outlook stuff through Amazon? Did you build the Outlook tools on AWS? Microsoft, are you telling on yourself a little bit right now? Are we learning something we're not supposed to know? Interesting. iCloud, primarily AWS. They've probably diversified since then, but oh, no, maybe not. Maybe not. Coursera also getting fucked. Canva. Oh man, they noticed right away up with Canva at 4 a.m. I don't know who was using Canva. I guess it was the people up late night in Europe. But this is just in the US 1 East region. So if your product is based in Europe or based somewhere else and your main stuff is in a different data center, you're fine. If you're in the West Coast data centers, you're fine. If you, again, you thought ahead and you're like, I should have copies running in all the data centers for all my customers, then right now your East Coast customers are fucked. But everybody else is fine. So you're probably rerouting to go to those other data centers and it's slowing everybody down because you had it spread out nice and thin. And today's the day that bites you in the butt. That's what I got. That's what I got for you. Yes. Oh, sure can. TikTok is a whole thing. Looks like they are having some issues, but where TikTok was built internal to China, they might have their own systems that they are running most of the stuff through. But AWS is a great place if you have a platform where people are uploading or generating tons and tons of media. AWS is by far the most cost-effective place to store it. So as TikTok grows and they're like, okay, we have servers that we've been buying more and more and more servers, but now it's growing astronomically. They're like, we got to start shoving stuff into Amazon because that's basically an infinite hole you can just keep putting more data into. And it looks like it's related, though these numbers are much lower than the numbers we were seeing for Canvas and for the other services. So they are minorly impacted, it seems. And it might just be depending on, oh, here's the best part. Here's the best part. I don't know. That might be unrelated. That might be people just like anytime anything took more than a femtosecond to load, they're like, ah, because they're looking for it now. I don't know. You can't like videos or add people as friends. Okay. You know how I was saying you can build different pieces, use different pieces from different clouds? It seems like whatever was controlling their social graph, liking stuff, adding people as friends, that system looks like lives in Amazon. But the actual content delivery may not. So it's mostly fine until you try to like a video or add someone as a friend or something that used that one Amazon system they were utilizing, and that part just doesn't work, which might be why the complaints are lower, because if you happen to not try to do that, you wouldn't notice because it's going down in parts. Yes. That we haven't. This Jennifer? Yeah. Do you think she's a bot? TikTok down. Thanks for helping. That's what that button was for. Thanks for adding nuance and detail. Go Sox. Those are White Sox, I know. App is super slow and glitchy. Lives are playing over and over and don't stop when the app closes. I don't think that's an AWS issue. I think that's a TikTok be janky issue. Um, so what is not broken is the app itself. The app itself is just screaming to the server saying, give me the data I need. And they're just, or rather asking over and over and over again for the data they need. And the servers are just, you know, that meme where the kid's screaming in the back seat with the rock? Like the servers are just screaming back nothing, just errors. Yeah, it gets like a lot of people who are disabled depend on Instacart to get groceries. And like that's the only way they're getting food into their house now. So like this could have real impacts. Pinterest, I could give a fuck, right? Like there isn't any safety issues happening with Pinterest going down. Robinhood, some people could get in a lot of trouble right here, but it looks like Robinhood is doing their backup plan. It looks like it is deploying. They got really fucked, and then Amazon went down again. They're like, nope, hit the backup plan, hit the backup plan. And something like Robinhood, that where people's like whole like financial security could be on the line, they should have a backup plan. Now, how would you as a customer know if any of your systems that you rely on use any of these services or have a backup plan should those services go down? Is there any way to know? Do you think that's in the terms of service? No, because the terms of service is about them protecting themselves from you, not about you protecting yourself from them. Terms of service is self-regulation to prevent governments from coming in and forcing them to do that stuff. Yeah, so going to be a rough day. And structure looks like it's tapering off, but that also might just be students giving up reporting it because that was, you know, it's 2 o'clock East Coast. So at this point, school has started across the entire United States. So like every teacher who sat down was like, fuck, it's not working. Like there was probably a wave at 8 a.m., 9 a.m., 10 a.m., 11 a.m. as every time zone school started and we noticed it wasn't working. And then nobody reported ever since. So that's probably still very down. That got worse. So now the server that tells us that there's a problem is down. Cool. Cool. Let's talk about programming, I guess. Where did we leave off? Actually, let's see if my Notes app is in Amazon. Ooh, good for you.